We played a lot of kickball when I was a kid. That was way back in the 1900s before human ingenuity figured out how to play games on TV screens. We had to play in the yard and deal with hardships such as fresh air and exercise. But my parents had a large backyard, and all of the neighbors would show up and all the kids would come and we would gather in the yard, and we had a black walnut tree that was first base and a mud patch that was second base, and a honeysuckle bush was third base, and there's a square in the sidewalk that was home. And everyone who showed up got put on a team. It didn't matter what age they were, how big they were, how small they were, what their gender was. If you showed up, you got put on a team. Even the small tag-along brothers and sisters who didn't understand the game or the rules were put on a team and given a chance to kick. They were never thrown out, but their runs didn't count. That's how we played. But it wasn't as utopian as nostalgia recalls, because fights broke out. Almost every inning, fights broke out. You're out, I'm safe, I got you by a mile, you missed, what are you, blind, what are you, stupid? And this went back and forth until finally someone decided to settle the matter by saying, let the babies have their way. And then both sides erupted into a new fight over who would take the high road by kicking the other team to the low road. And so it went. But there was one guy in the neighborhood, Scott, who was in my grade, but always seemed older than I was. And he never fought. If he got called out, he just accepted it and walked away, even if he was obviously safe. And it drove me nuts. So one day when he was on my team, I confronted him with it. I asked him, how come you let them call you out? You were safe by 3 feet. And he just shrugged it off and said, yeah, because then a big argument and fight would break out. We'd waste all our time instead of playing the game. And I said, but 2 runs would have scored. And he said, who cares about the score? So what? Who cares about the score? That's why we play. And Scott said, no, we just play to have fun. Besides, in 15 minutes, we'll all get called home for supper. The score won't matter. Why would we waste the time fighting and arguing? In 15 minutes, we all have to go home for supper. So while the rest of us were squandering our time and our energy fighting and arguing over petty self-interest, Scott was playing the long game. And I'm not sure if he was just a pragmatist or a 12-year-old philosopher. But he gives us all very valuable perspective. This idea of turning the other cheek isn't about surrendering or giving in or letting someone else bully you. This idea of turning the other cheek is about staying strong in your focus and not losing sight of why we're here in the first place. It's about not letting someone else and other issues in the daily pettiness of scorekeeping and who's right and who's wrong knock us off our keel. This idea of turning the other cheek is about holding steadfast in our focus that the real reason we're here is to love one another and to value the dignity of each and every person that shows up, regardless of their age or their gender or whether or not they even understand the rules we play by, but to value their dignity anyway, and to share the joy of living with each other. How often do we allow ourselves to get caught up in the pettiness of the argument, and in the process lose sight of why we're here in the first place? In the large spectrum of things, the idea that we would fight fire with fire is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. When the fire department shows up at your house, they bring water and hoses. They don't show up with blowtorches and flamethrowers. That would be madness. And that's how Jesus tells us to live, because the only way to extinguish the flames of hatred and anger and violence is with an outflow of the baptismal waters of love and mercy and forgiveness. So Jesus says, focus on that. Because love is what conquers all. When we love our enemies and we love our neighbors as ourselves, and we live with a generous and inclusive heart, that's how. So stop keeping score. Play the long game, Jesus says. Play the long game, and play it with all your heart. Because in 15 minutes, we'll all get called home for dinner.